Morning. Oh, yes. Since I was on the committee, I had access to a few extra graphics, so I thought this would be a good way to start out. Anyway, as Bill was talking about all the different trails, on this picture here, you can see the trails, and there were so many of them. It wasn't just like one road. They were kind of spread out all across. Now this map depicts most of Nebraska. And you can see Hall County, that little square there off to the left side of the image. And Hall County is what my whole presentation is based upon. But all these trails all came through there. And like Bill mentioned, the Oregon Trail is down there at the very bottom where it comes up. And the Hall County Historical Society, this year is very significant for us too. This is our 100th anniversary. The Hall County Historical Society was created by a bunch of members of the Grand Island Liederkranz. The Liederkranz was a German singing club, and they were started in, 1870 or 1880, early years. Anyway, some of the members of that organization decided that we really need to document this history of the early pioneers that came out. So they formed the Hall County Historical Society in 1922. And one of the very first things they did was to put in 6 markers across the county. And the picture you can see here where it says the Overland Trail, the Old California Overland Trail. That's just the basic header on it to kind of get people's attention. But then you read the rest of it, and it talks about the rest of the trails, including the Mormon Trail that came through. And on this little map, you can see those little black dots. Well, those represent where these markers are placed across the county. On the far right side, there's one that's almost off the edge. And that's on the edge of the county, and I'll show you more pictures here later of where these actually are. That first one is out at the very edge of the county, and there was I guess you call it a dance hall, or it was a big reception type hall out there, and they called that Harmony Hall, which that was built quite a few later years. But this spot right out there is where the trails, where the pioneers came from Merritt County into Hall County. And the next little dot is, that one is down actually in the Riverside area. And the Riverside area is it was one of the first high-end housing developments in Grand Island. And it's right down by a Riverside Country Club. This marker originally was a little bit closer to the Wood River, but they moved the marker and put it in the middle of an island, so it's on a divided street that goes through that area. And I'll show you a picture of that. The next dot, the third one from the right, is at Stewart Museum. That marker was originally right out along Highway 281, which wasn't 281 when they put that in. It was just a road. It was actually called Webb Road, and it was part of the 9 Bridge Road that the early pioneers put in to get from Grand Island to Hastings. It was 9 bridges. Actually, to get to Donovan, 12 miles south, they had to cross 9 bridges to get down there. When they built Stewart Museum down there, they moved that marker and put it near the main building for Stewart Museum, which now a lot of people can see the marker. Where it was before, really nobody was going to see it. The one that's kind of in the middle of that map, I'm going to talk quite a bit about that a little later. That's a place called the Townsley Murdoch site. The next one over there, it shows it right on Highway 11. That's one north of Wood River. Almost in town, but just out of town a little bit. And the far right one on there is at the western boundary of Hall County, right where the town of Shelton is. Shelton is just about a mile, or even less than that, to the west of this marker. Okay, this is the one out at where I called Harmony Hall. It's at the eastern edge of the county, Gunrow Road and Sealing Mile Road. All of these markers are identical, so you're going to see them all from a distance. They all look the same. But if you look way back towards those two orange poles, the one on the left, you can see a little bit of water. That's the Wood River. That's what they followed. Now here they're on the north side of the Wood River as they traveled through this area. This is the marker on the left here is the one in the Riverside area. And you can see it's right in the middle of that little island of the street. And this is probably one of the best kept markers in the whole county. It gets mowed all the time. It looks really nice out there. Very few people know about this one though. It's a little bit crooked because somebody decided to run into it one time and knock it over. The one on the right is the one at Stewart Museum. It's pretty well kept too. They don't water it as much. So the grass is a little dry out there. And this is the Townsley Burdock site. And the sign says the Burdock site, which this sign is in error. It should say Townsley before Murdoch. The Townsleys were the first people to own this site. And you can see one of the National Park Service markers right there. The piece on the right of this marker is just like one of these out here. There are 12 of these markers across the state of Nebraska. The right portion is essentially the same, and the left portion tells about the site. So that's, from this site, if you look really, really close, from the left side of this marker to that power pole in the back, that's where all the wagon trains came through. You can see the swales, a little tough to see on this picture, but if you go to the site and go to the far west end and look back to the east or northeast, you can see the swales a little better. But this is one of the two really prominent sites in Hall County where you can see the swales. There's another one in the northern part of Wood River where it's just some pasture land, and you can see the swales there too, but they're not quite as pronounced as they are here at this site. And you see here on this sign, in 1847, Brigham Young brought the group through here about noon on April 28th or 29th, April 29th. They came through this area. Then as you head further west, this is the marker in Wood River, just north of the town. Excuse me. It's at the corner of Green Street and Cottonwood. And this marker, I drove by it 3 times and didn't see it. Where it sits, there's a cornfield. You can see it there on the south side of the marker. I'm facing west when I took a picture of this. Now all of these markers also have a little place on the top of the marker with an arrow indicating the direction of the pioneers, the direction of the trail. All of these are accurate except the one that's out by Shelton. It has them going the wrong direction because we had to move that marker. We'll get to that here pretty quick. So, one of the things, it's pretty neat here with this, if you look at those 2 signs up there, one of them says stone marker, which marks the trail. The other one though talks about the Miller and Company Ranch. There were ranches all the way along. And back here at the Townsley Burdock site, the Townsleys had a road ranch at this location also. And the Murdochs probably did too, because there were a lot of pioneers that came through this area. And this is the marker out by Shelton. It's where the Platte Valley Academy used to be. And we had the marker at the Platte Valley Academy, and the marker itself, as you looked at it, you'd be looking facing west. If you were facing west, the arrow on the top would point to the southwest, indicating the direction of the trail. Well, now you look at the marker, you're facing south, so it points you off to the southeast. It isn't quite right, but that's okay. We're going to get that changed. The other marker there, the state marker, is for the Platte Valley Academy. The Alumni Association put that marker in, and they chose this spot since we had our Mormon Trail, or excuse me, Pioneer Trails marker. at this location. They put theirs at the same place. The nice thing about this, these stone markers we put in are not listed on the state marker of historic sites, or where there's historic markers. Since the Platte Valley Academy Alumni Association put their marker in, now people can find that marker. When they do, they'll find our trail marker also. Okay, now I've got a few pictures here, and they're from the book we have. I've got a book laying over there somewhere. Okay, we have this book that's written by Bob Manley. He did a lot of research on this. This book was published in 2001, but it covers a lot of information about the trails. Its focus is Hall County, but it covers the trails all the way from Omaha and Nebraska City, all the way out to Scottsbluff. Those are all covered in this book. So anyway, some of the pictures, this was the depiction of a camp near Wood River. They show a few trees. Those trees were only along the river. The rest of it was just prairie. It was just grass out there. And a lot of artists, when they paint these pictures, they like to put a lot of trees in. That wasn't quite right. As I mentioned, my great-great-grandfather was one of the early pioneers that came out with the group that settled Grand Island. We have a painting that shows where his house was. There was actually a fort called Fort Independence out there, and the artist that painted this also painted in a bunch of trees. Well, the trees were only along the river. They weren't up in the prairie until quite a while later. Okay, this map here shows a lot of there's a lot of information here, but the main thing I want to show you on this one is that diagonal line that says Wood River Crossing. When these pioneers came out, they were on the north side of the Wood River, or north side of the Platte River, and just about a mile east, northeast actually, of the Townsley Murdoch site is where they crossed the Wood River. I was on a history tour it was a history class I was taking, and the instructor, the late Gene Buddy, took us out there, and we saw the swales, the ruts where they came up. Now at this crossing, when they went into the Wood River, it was fairly shallow. They could just go right into it, but coming out was a fairly steep bank. The first time I took this class, we could actually see those ruts where they came up. The second time I took the class, which was a year or two later, we went out to this site and those ruts were gone. The instructor of the class almost broke down in tears. The farmer that owned that piece of land decided, I could plant 5 more stalks of corn here. So he plowed it all out, filled it in, planted his corn. So, destroyed a little piece of history. Now I had a picture of that, but I don't have a picture of that site. Okay, when they crossed a lot of these rivers, like the Missouri and the Platte in a lot of cases, and the Loop, as far as that goes, they would have a ferry, and this is the artist's depiction of a ferry that would haul one wagon across at a time. Well, if you have a bunch of wagons, this is going to take a long time to go across these rivers. And most of these rivers weren't very wide, except the Platte. And next to this, on the right side, you can see an immigrant's guide, and this was made by William Clayton when he went across in, I think it was 1847. But in 1848, he had these booklets, and these booklets would tell about different sites along the trail, where there's good grass, where there's good water, everything they would need, where there's food. Next one here is the Johnson Ranch. They had a little flyer in there that would tell about their ranch. And over on the right is another page that talks about the Veerig Ranch. The Veerigs were primarily over in Merritt County. And down below this on the left side, you can see the Huntsman's Echo. Well, the Huntsman's Echo was a publication. It was a Mormon publication, and it was, you can see on here it says Wood River Center. Well, Wood River Center is the town now called Shelton, but it was Wood River Center originally. But we had another one, the town now called Wood River is about 6 miles or so to the east of Wood River Center. And this is kind of what one of those road ranches would look like. Essentially a cabin, what it was. And here's another picture of some of these trails. This was 1857. The maps were a little better. They had more trails denoted on here. And this one talks about Nebraska Center. And Nebraska Center is where the loop and the Platte come together. You can kind of see it over there. And that would be east of Grand Island a ways. This one is a map put out trying to get people to go out west to the gold fields out there in the Rockies. Now, you gotta remember at this time, Nebraska Territory didn't stop at about Scotts Bluff. Nebraska Territory went clear to the Rockies. So when they talk about going out to Salt Lake Valley, they were going through Nebraska, then a little bit of Wyoming, then actually outside of it. These states weren't even developed yet. But the territories out there beyond what was the United States. And that's about it. Thank you.